like football, baby.
What's up, guys? Welcome in to the Fantasy Football Smackdown. I'm your host, Kyle August, getting you set for week 2. This is, if you're watching on YouTube, this is Thursday night. Kickoff of this barn burner. It's just about an hour or so away. And on this show, I'm going to cover some of my favorite starts and sits in advance of week 2. So I appreciate you checking out today's show. If you missed anything from the Warzone Network this week, man, you missed out. I was here on Tuesday morning on the podcast covering the waiver wire ads for this week. Memphis, I've always with Jerry holding it down on Wednesday. And then Memphis and Kyle were here just last night in your podcast feed, Thursday morning, coming at you with the fabulous big bet. We got DFS content coming up. And of course, as a quick reminder, every Saturday morning, YouTube only, you can check it out right here, waiver wire sniping. I'm going to give you the guys that you need to add ahead of kickoff so that they can be on your roster. You don't need to fret. You don't need to spend FAD. You can just grab them for free. It's looking ahead 1 week. So waiver wire sniping, get that jump on your league, know the players that you should pick up before kickoff for next week, and your league mates won't know what hit them. So YouTube only, again, that won't be in your podcast feed. So if you're looking for it last week and you missed it, that would be why. So going to hang out here for the next 30 minutes or so. If you have any questions, drop them in the chat. And we'll get them all answered here right on the podcast. So appreciate you guys if you're tuning in. If you're listening to this on the podcast and you're not checking out YouTube for this start sit show, it's 7 p.m. Eastern time every Thursday. I'll be right here covering the starts and sits. So if you have your questions, feel free to bring them. Your other opportunity for a live show is Sunday morning. So just stay subscribed on the YouTube channel, and Memphis will be here with whoever shows up from the Warzone Network. I was on there for about half an hour, 45 minutes last week. I'll be sure to try to do that as often as possible. So it's a good time hanging out, talking football, covering all the ins and outs as we get the inactives and then any of your last minute start sit questions as well. So a few opportunities. These are very, they're meant to be interactive shows. So we want to hear from you guys, get your questions in, and I'll be sure to get them answered. So with that, I'm just going to jump into it. I have a start and a sit at every position for this upcoming week. And this isn't your watered down, start Aaron Jones this week in a prime matchup. And no, we know that, right? We're going to dig a little bit deeper for you here and get you covered. But again, we'll sprinkle these questions throughout the show if you have them. So feel free to drop them in the comments. Alrighty, let's start with a quarterback. My start of the week at quarterback, again, I'm not giving you guys the easy names. We're going to dig a little bit deeper. I mentioned him on the Tuesday podcast as being my top waiver wire pickup for this week at quarterback. He's an auto start for me. He comes in at QB 13. So if you've been streaming, this is your guy. He's 37% owned in Yahoo League, so readily available still. It's Ben Roethlisberger at home against the Las Vegas Raiders. This is a guy that I know last week, under 200 yards, just the one passing touchdown. But that was against Buffalo on the road. And they were, obviously they were chasing in some of that game, but obviously won heavily there in Buffalo. I think this is a week where this offense just gets off on the right foot, gets rolling, and gets back to kind of what we saw last year. I think Ben Roethlisberger is good for at least 2 touchdowns in this game, potential for a third, over 280 yards, and that's definitely streamable, and I think that's the floor. Vegas is coming off an emotional win, which is great for them, picking up their first victory in their new stadium, but I think heading to Pittsburgh now is a different challenge. So Big Ben is my start of the week at quarterback. For reference here, I would play him over Kirk Cousins, who I know some people were streaming last week. He does have a good match against Arizona, but I'd start Ben over him. I'd start him over Joe Burrow. This Bears defense isn't as intimidating as we might have thought after week 1, but I'd still start Ben at home against the Raiders over Burrow on the road against the Bears. And then a quarterback that could be a popular streaming option this week due to having pretty much one of the best matchups in all of fantasy is Baker Mayfield. I would go with Ben Roethlisberger over him as well. So again, Big Ben is only 37% owned in Yahoo leagues. And not only that, does he have a great matchup this week at home against the Raiders. You take a look there, while this defense should be improved, is that the Steelers get a week 3 matchup at home against the Cincinnati Bengals. So I think that Ben could be a 2-week starter for you if you're streaming quarterbacks. My sit of the week at quarterback, this guy isn't completely just dunked to the bottom of the earth. But I'm going to go with Jameis Winston. He's QB 19 for me this week at Carolina. I know that, again, that Carolina defense isn't much to write home about. I know they kept the Jets in check. But for me, I know we saw 5 touchdowns from Jameis Winston last week. That was great on 20 pass attempts. I don't know that same efficiency is going to keep rolling in week 2. So while Jameis is still a super flex start and is a fine plug and play there, I don't think he really enters the streaming conversation for me in 1 QB leagues. For instance, I mentioned previously Baker Mayfield this week against Houston. Trevor Lawrence, I know he has a tougher matchup against the Denver Broncos. I would still roll with him. I think there's just a ton of garbage time potential always for Lawrence this season. And then Teddy Bridgewater in that same game going up against Jacksonville. I would roll Teddy, and he was only owned in about 10% of leagues earlier this week. So those are some guys, if you're looking for like streamer type QBs, you could do worse than Jameis, Matt Ryan. But Jameis is a guy that I'm just fading just a little bit compared to what I was seeing over at Fantasy Pros and consensus rankings. People kind of seem to be jumping right back on board with Jameis Winston. Let's not forget, his weapons are still very depleted. That game, I think last week was more, of the, kind of a one-off. I think Jameis will be a fine QB2, but I don't know he's a starter in a 1 QB league yet for me. So I mentioned him earlier. I'll give you a little bonus. By no means should you have Matt Ryan in your lineup this week. He's going up against Tampa Bay. I have him outside my top 25. Tyrod Taylor, Sam Darnold, Jared Goff, those guys, Teddy Bridgewater, those guys are all starters over Matt Ryan at Tampa Bay. This guy should be on your bench till further notice, even in super flex leagues like, where you're starting 2 QBs. Hopefully you have a third quarterback, and I would roll him over. It's just last week was extremely disappointing against a defense that isn't really that great at home. And now he's going on the road against while they gave up a lot of points to Dallas, this is a much better defense. So Matt Ryan, I got to see it first, at least a couple times. This was another one of those sub 8-point games where we saw, he was doing that about 40% of the time last year, and seems to be continuing there. So little bonus sit for you if you're in the position of having to start Matt Ryan, which I was staring that down in a few leagues. So I know some of you might be on that train. I'm going Jared Goff. All right, let's move on to the running backs here. And again, if you have any questions, if you're tuning in live, feel free to drop them in the chat. We'll sprinkle them in. If we don't have any, you're going to get 4 starts, 4 sits, and we'll watch some football tonight. Start of the week at running back, I'm going to go with 2. I'm going to go with the Denver Broncos running backs. They have a great matchup against Jacksonville. This is a team that over their last 5 games, so last week and then the last 4 games of 2020, they've given up 9 touchdowns to running backs, including 3 last week to the Houston Texans, and that trio of garbage. What we saw from Melvin Gordon and Javonte Williams was a dead even split, which is concerning if you're hoping that one of them can, jump. I know a lot of people were kind of thinking, Gordon was a decent value on draft day when you consider that maybe he was going to get that early season work. And then Williams is been kind of promoted as that league winner guy. I still think that's in the cards for him. But if you were kind of banking on Gordon early, the 50-50 split is not great. The long touchdown run at the end of week 1, that was awesome, right? If you had to play him, you're feeling good about that. But I still think you can actually roll both of them for this week. If it stays as a 50-50 split, I think they can both be, at least flex plays. I actually have Melvin Gordon as RB23 in my ranking, so I think he's a low-end 2. And Javonte Williams at RB25 for me this week, so again, high-end flex. Just for reference, with those guys, I would start both over Elijah Mitchell, the waiver wire darling after this last week. I know that he's getting a lot of hype, and when you grab a guy like that off the wire, you spent a lot of fab on him. You just want to get him in your lineup. But I'm just not sold yet that that's going to be how that plays out like we saw last week. I think that was a game where I think they're trying to prove a point to Sermon, and Mitchell's probably, he is ahead of him. I don't know that you got to see otherwise. You do have to see otherwise before you think that Sermon's going to automatically be ahead, but I don't think that's automatic. He's going to get 20 carries right out the gate. So I would start these Denver Broncos, both of them over Josh Jacobs dealing with an injury, seemed limited last week on Monday night. He's going up against Pittsburgh, and then Jamal Williams going up against Green Bay. I know it's a great matchup. Green Bay does give up a lot of points to the running back position. That's a game that Detroit should be playing from behind. So Williams could be involved in the passing game there. He did pop up on the injury report on Thursday, but coming off a good week 1, I'd still start Javonte and Melvin Gordon over those guys. Just a great matchup. And I think they could both be in line for touchdowns. So that's why they're my starts this week. Sit of the week at running back. I don't know if I keep crapping on the Falcons, I guess, but it's Mike Davis, and it's not even close, really. This guy was still hovering around flex territory over at Fantasy Pros consensus rankings over last year, and then including week 1 against Zeke Elliott and the Dallas Cowboys. This Tampa Bay defense has only given up more than 50 rushing yards 3 times. You know what that front is with Vea and Sue. This is a great defense. This is a great rush defense, and that's why Dallas just said, forget it. They didn't even try. Atlanta is probably going to be playing from behind the entire game. Patterson was on the field quite a bit for the Atlanta Falcons and could take that passing down role. I know Davis showed last year that he could, that he can do it. He can be serviceable. He's a backup running back in the league for a reason. He's been around. But this is just not the week that I'm starting Mike Davis. He's not in my lineup in this really, really tough matchup. So I would roll with, in the same matchup, Leonard Fournette over him. I mentioned Jamal Williams was behind the Denver guys, but he'd be ahead of Mike Davis for me as well, even, in the 2-back committee there. Nyheim Hines is another guy that saw a good amount of touches, a lot of catches in that game. I'd start him over Mike Davis pretty easily. So we do have a question here. Here we go. We got Darren. What's up, bro? Thanks for jumping on here. His question is Tim Patrick or Terrace Marshall. Man, that's in half PPR. I know that Sterling Shepard got a lot of hype on waiver wire columns and podcasts this week. He was readily available, coming off a big game, 100 yards and a touchdown. He's going to be playing tonight, so we'll see right off the bat what he's going to be looking like. But actually, Tim Patrick was way up there as one of my favorite wide receiver ads. I talked about on the waiver wire show. We're going to see Jerry Jeudy out 4 to 6 weeks. We saw last year with Patrick as he saw a lot of playing time in this Denver offense. Now a lot has changed, but when he was filling in for Sutton, he was just a touchdown monster. It seemed like he scored every week, and he scored last week as well. So I think Tim Patrick and this matchup against Jacksonville is a slam dunk play. I actually have him. I was just going to pull this up. He's definitely flex worthy for me, and I'd play him over Marshall. I have Patrick as wide receiver 35 this week. So I'll talk about wide receivers here more in a second, but appreciate the question, bro. But I'd roll with Tim Patrick and feel pretty good about that, actually. I think you're going to have a starter, a wide receiver 3-ish type player for at least the next month. So appreciate the question, bro. If anybody has any more questions, feel free to drop them in here. Couple of bonus sits at the running back since we got a little bit of time here. I'm gonna throw Tyson Williams, the Baltimore Ravens. I didn't really love the split that I saw in that second half for sure. He definitely has more juice. He has more get up to his game than what we saw out of Latavius Murray, but they cut Cannon. I think that and they brought Freeman, from the practice squad, signed him to the 53. So I think the rotation's a little bit unknown there. But I would not be surprised if Latavius Murray ends up being the preferred back just with a vet presence. I don't think Williams is somebody, I know he's not a guy that played his way into that role. Everyone and their mother fell to the wayside there. So I'm still holding on to Williams. He's definitely somebody I want on my bench, but I have Williams at running back 39 this week, and I'm not really interested in playing him. The other guy I mentioned earlier, I just want to kind of throw this out there as just a pump the brakes. Elijah Mitchell, I know, was a big time waiver ad, and I want him on my bench as well. It's fine, but I want to. You got to show me again. If you're in a deeper league and you need to get him out there, no problems. I still have Mitchell ranked as running back 29. I think he's a fine flex, but just don't get crazy. If you have 3 really good running backs, stick with those guys. But there you go. So that wraps up the running backs. Let's move on to the wide receivers. My start of the week at wide receiver. Again, digging a little bit deeper here. You don't need me to tell you to start, Keenan Allen in a great matchup against Dallas, but I will tell you to start his teammate Mike Williams against the Dallas Cowboys. The over-under on this game is 55 points. Dallas pass rush is completely been voided out this week. DeMarcus Lawrence goes down with a foot injury. He's out for at least 2 months probably. And Randy Gregory is out with COVID. So the Cowboys are going to get no pressure on Justin Herbert. They're already not a great defense as it is, but now you add in, he's going to have all day to throw the ball. Mike Williams, like we saw last week, heavily involved in the offense. I think Williams is going to eat, and he's a guy that was probably on your bench in week 1. And sometimes it feels weird. You don't want to just react right away to like, oh, he had a big week, I got to cram him in my lineup. But this is a situation I definitely think you need to get him in there. He's a borderline wide receiver 2 for me. There's a lot of great wide receivers this week that have a ton of great matchups. but I do have Mike Williams as my wide receiver 26. So he's even though he's at 26, I think he's a solid 2 and a high end 3 for sure. So if you have a flex spot, a wide receiver 3 spot, get him in there. A little bit of reference on this for Mike Williams. I'd start him over Cortland Sutton. I like Sutton okay. They're just a couple of spots apart, but I think Williams has more upside this week. I know both matchups are great, but I expect Dallas and the Chargers to be a shootout. So I would lean that way, even with Jerry Jeudy out. I would go with Williams over Sutton. I would go with Williams over Robbie Anderson as well. Obviously found pay dirt last week, but Anderson going up against New Orleans. I think that we saw Marshall pretty involved enough that I think it's a little bit concerning. And obviously CMC being back is going to take a lot of targets as well. I'd start Mike Williams over Robbie Anderson. And maybe the big one, I don't know if this is a big deal or not, but I would go Mike Williams over Deebo Samuel, who's coming off of wide receiver 2 last week. I just think that Williams has more upside against the Cowboys in a matchup there's going to be a ton of points. So we got somebody in the chat here. Don't you talk bad about Mitchell? Yeah, I'm sorry. I know it's blasphemy to take down the hot waiver wire ad. It feels like an auto start. Again, flex worthy for sure, but don't get crazy. In my opinion, we'll see. If you have him on your team, you feel damn good right out of the gate. You could be sitting here with a running back that, if San Fran commits 65% of the touches to one guy, damn, you're looking at probably a top 15 guy. So to get him for free off the wire, or in preseason, super cheap in drafts, if you were on that train, and you got to feel good about that. So we'll see. But I'm going to be a little bit more conservative. I still think that Sermon's going to be better rest of the season. So maybe I'm just delusional, but we'll see. So here we go. We got to see this. David comes back. He says he has Sermon. He's just giving me crap. That's all good, man. I'm on the Sermon train as of right now. We'll see how this goes, but that's going to be an interesting one, because this would not be the first time that fantasy owners overreacted to just 1 week and went all in on a guy right away. So we'll see. Back to the starts and sits at receiver. My sit of the week at receiver. I don't like to give obvious ones. I feel like this one, is definitely a concern if you're looking at the matchup this week for the Jets going up against the New England Patriots. So on the road, this one's going to be at home. My bad. The Jets at home against the Patriots. I'm going to sit Corey Davis. I know he's coming off a big week. I expect big things from this guy. I think he's a wide receiver 3, maybe even a low end 2 on most weeks. But Zach Wilson's first game against Bill Belichick, I'm going to dial back expectations just a bit. Davis is wide receiver 40 for me, so he's really outside the flex conversation. If you're in a deeper league and you need to roll him, I think he'll see plenty of targets. He should be Zach Wilson's guy, but I just think the upside's a little bit capped with the matchup. So a few guys I'm playing over Corey Davis this week that probably didn't have over him last week. Jarvis Landry, he's going to be the only show in town. No OBJ, and they have a great matchup against Houston, so hopefully he can get some early points there. Tim Patrick, I mentioned him earlier in the show. I like him a lot this week. I think he can be wide receiver 3 level for sure. And Jalen Waddle, I like what I saw last week. They were getting involved right away. I know that Will Fuller should be back. He missed practice today for personal reasons, but I have Patrick and Waddle right there around that 35th range. So just a little bit ahead of Corey Davis. So, all right, we got, so that wraps up the wide receivers there. So that one is going to be one to watch. I like Corey Davis. I know that he skyrocketed a lot in draft season. He was going like round 9, round 10. Early August, then you had to pay like the round 6 or 7 price tag on him as we got closer and closer to the season. But I think for now, you might have a better option that makes that an easy call. But again, some of those guys, even picking up Tim Patrick, I would just go ahead and roll him this week. All right, moving on to the tight end. Everybody on this offense disappointed last week, but I'm going to go back to the well with the Green Bay Packers and Robert Tonyan. He's tight end 10 for me this week. I think that this is Aaron Rodgers getting back on track and taking it out on the Detroit Lions like he does all the time. I think that there's at least 3 passing touchdowns to go around in this game for Aaron Rodgers, and I think Tonyan can catch one of those. So he's again, tight end 10 for me. I'm going to play over Tyler Higbee and Jonnu Smith. Those guys are ranked really, really close. When you get to tight end, we're talking starts and sits. You got to be particular. There's not obviously a lot of gaps like there are at running back and wide receiver, a lot of options, but if you're worried about Tonyan after week 1, I think he's a fine play for week 2. I'm going to roll him in there and see we know who he is. He's not going to be a big yardage guy. You need that touchdown, but that's how a lot of these tight ends are, outside the top 4 or 5. So I'm going to go with Tonyan as my tight end start for this week. My sit of the week at tight end. Unfortunately, I talked about this guy on waiver wire sniping and was really hyped for him. And I mean, hell, even I've been putting wagers here and there. It's legal where I'm at, so got to get on the fun. Memphis has convinced me. But I put I bet, I think it was like $10 or whatever on Hooper last week, over 3.5 catches. The dude goes out first drive, 3 targets, 3 catches, money, right? I'm in. I'm just going to dunk it home. No, that was it. That's what he finished with. David Njoku got three catches, 70+ yards. So I'm worried about Austin Hooper this week. I know it's a great matchup against Houston, but I'm not streaming this guy. He's on the bench for me. I'd start Jared Cook over him. He's still readily available. You can go pick him up. And digging even a little bit deeper, Blake Jarwin with Michael Gallup out in a barn burner there against the Chargers, and Adam Troutman. I know he wasn't the pickup. Johnson was the guy, right, for the Saints, but Troutman played more snaps. I think he's going to get more looks this week. So I'm benching Austin Hooper, and I'm going to put in those guys. You can pick up any of those guys that are available, stream them, and you're rolling. So if you're looking for a streamer, try to avoid Austin Hooper this week. Darren's back. This was back, kind of taking a step back to Corey Davis. He's got Shenault, Mitchell, Aguilar, Barkley. I'm not starting Barkley. And again, if you guys listen on the podcast, you're gonna know whether I'm right or wrong there. I would go with Mitchell in that case. I don't really love the other options there. And again, I think that Davis's upside is just a little bit capped. So I'd go with Mitchell. I think he's again, I think he'll be fine. I just don't want to completely buy in, and I'm not plugging him into my top 20 right away like some people are. So maybe that means I'm going to miss out on it. Maybe not. But that's the route I'm going to go. So I would go Mitchell over Corey Davis this week. I would put Shenault over Corey Davis if I had that option as well. Hopefully Barkley comes out of this thing good, man, and you'll be set going forward. Playing, 2 games in 4 or 5 days is tough, especially when, they wanted to kind of ease him back in. But now 10 days rest. So if I'm a Barkley owner, what I want to do is kind of just let this get past this game. I own Barkley in a couple of leagues. I'm not starting him because I just have, I have better options. I don't have to risk it tonight, and just want him to get through, get some touches, but then that's it, man. I don't think he's going to be a fantasy starter right now, but hopefully in week 3, the news will get a little bit better and we'll be off and running. If you took the chance on Saquon Barkley, I still think you hold tight. You're in good shape. But for this week, I would go Mitchell and then Shenault over Davis if you're out having that decision to make. So, all right. Well, I'll leave this open for another minute or 2 here. If anybody has any other questions, feel free to toss them in the chat. But otherwise, those are my starts and sits for week 2. Appreciate you tuning in and checking out the show. Again, they're going to be doing this every single Thursday, 7 p.m. Eastern time. So gives you a little bit of time before Thursday night football. And we get rolling. So, and Barkley is active, so we're good to go there. We got David said he heard Barkley's full go divisional opponent. Hope you're right. If he is a full go, that's fine. I have Barkley. I get on some teams. I'll just let that ride on the pine and then feel really, really good about week 3. As long as Barkley gets, pretty much what he did on Sunday, then I'll still feel good about him in week 3. But if he's full go tonight, let's go. I think that's something that fantasy owners rightfully took advantage of. He took him at the end of round 1, early round 2, and I think he's going to pay dividends this season. But just a little nervous as of right now because he's outside my top 30 at the running back position for this week for you guys. So, but again, 7 p.m. Eastern time every single Thursday. Come hang out, bring your questions in the chat. Otherwise, I got you covered on some of my favorite deeper starts and sits for the week ahead. And last reminder, I will be back here waiver wire sniping. It's going to be a YouTube only show. You can find it right here on the Dynasty Warzone YouTube Saturday morning. So I'm going to be covering players that you can snipe off of the free agent wire in your league and just taking a look ahead so that when waivers roll ahead of week 3, you already have these guys on your roster and the rest of your league doesn't know what happened because you're waiver wire sniping. So with that, boys, appreciate it. Thanks so much for checking out the show. Enjoy the game tonight. If you can, maybe put some money on it, make it a little bit more interesting. But for now, I will be back here, YouTube only, Saturday morning. And then we'll also see you guys live on Sunday morning as well, hanging out with Memphis. So we'll catch you guys later. See ya.